I never thought I'd be the architect of someone else's romantic downfall, but life has a way of surprising you. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 28, I thought I had a pretty good handle on life here in Portland. The rain-soaked streets and cozy coffee shops had always felt like home, and I'd built myself a decent career in graphic design that let me express my creativity while paying the bills. My friends would describe me as level-headed, maybe even cautious when it came to relationships. I'd had my share of dating disappointments, but nothing that prepared me for what was about to happen. It all started 8 years ago when I met Daniel. The moment he walked into that book launch at Powell's, I felt something I'd never experienced before. He had this magnetic energy, the kind that draws everyone's attention, but somehow his focus landed entirely on me. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, moving from books to music to our shared love of the Oregon coastline. By the end of the night, I felt like I'd known him forever. When he asked for my number, my hand was shaking slightly as I typed it into his phone. Our early days together were magical, like being caught in a whirlwind romance movie where everything is perfect. Daniel listened to me in a way no one ever had before. He remembered tiny details about stories I told him and would reference them weeks later. He'd send me text messages in the middle of the day just to tell me he was thinking about me. It seemed like we had everything in common, from our taste in obscure indie bands to our love of spicy food. For the first time in my life, I felt completely seen and understood. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags that I was too blinded by emotion to notice. During our second month together, Daniel took me out on his small boat to a secluded island off the coast. He'd packed an elaborate picnic with all my favorite foods, served homemade limoncello, and we spent hours diving in the crystal clear water. When he emerged from the ocean clutching a giant shell that he presented to me as a token of his love, I nearly burst into tears. It was like something from a romance novel, too perfect to be real. But I believed it all. Shortly after that trip, he drove me to his childhood home, a quaint cottage outside the city. With reverence, he showed me old photographs of his parents who had passed away years earlier. His voice cracked with emotion as he shared stories of his childhood. The pinnacle of the visit was when he presented me with a worn teddy bear, explaining it was his most treasured possession from childhood. He wanted me to have it because, as he said, "You're my most precious treasure now." I was completely hooked. In my mind, I had found my soulmate, the person I would build my life with. The change was so gradual that I hardly noticed it happening. A casual remark about my outfit looking interesting rather than beautiful. A lingering glance at our server that made my stomach tight. Small criticisms slipped into conversations about my friends, my job, my habits. Each one was delivered with just enough care that I found myself questioning if I was being oversensitive. Was I the problem? When we would go out, Daniel would openly flirt with other women, sometimes right in front of me. When I confronted him about it later, tears streaming down my face, he would transform back into the sweet, attentive man I had fallen for. He would hold me close, apologize profusely, promise it would never happen again. And for a while, things would be good again. Until the next time. I started to feel like I was constantly auditioning for the role of Daniel's girlfriend, a part I thought I had already secured. The loving gestures that had once come so easily now had to be earned through tears and pleading. I found myself walking on eggshells, carefully monitoring my behavior, terrified of doing or saying something that would trigger his coldness. Despite the growing evidence that something was seriously wrong, I clung to the memory of those early, magical days, convinced that if I just tried harder, that Daniel would return. One particularly exhausting day, I came out of the shower to find Daniel intensely focused on his laptop screen. When he noticed me, he quickly minimized the window, but not before I caught a glimpse of what looked like a dating profile. My heart dropped to my stomach, but when I asked him about it, he turned it around on me. "I wanted to see if you would get jealous and controlling again," he said with a dismissive shrug. "You're always so paranoid, Olivia." I didn't believe him, not for a second, but I also didn't have proof. That's when I remembered something from the early days of our relationship. Daniel was notoriously bad with technology, and once when he was setting up an account for an online chess site, he had grown so frustrated that he called me for help. Rather than guide him through creating a secure password, he had impatiently blurted out what he wanted to use. It was a strange combination of his childhood dog's name and his birth year, something he used for everything. After he fell asleep that night, I crept to his laptop. My hands shook as I typed in his username and that familiar password on the dating site I had seen him browsing. The screen loaded, and there it was, his active profile, complete with recent photos and a bio describing himself as single and looking for casual encounters. I felt physically ill as I clicked through his messages. Not only was he actively pursuing other women, but he had actually met up with several of them. The messages contained explicit details of their encounters, and worse still, intimate information about me, critiques of my body, my personality, things I had shared with him in confidence that he now used as amusing anecdotes to charm other women. I sat there on the floor of our apartment at 3 in the morning, silently sobbing, feeling like my entire world was collapsing. All those times I had suspected something and he had convinced me I was crazy, paranoid, insecure. All those times I had apologized for my jealousy. He had been cheating all along. The perfect beginning of our relationship, the connection I thought we had, it had all been an elaborate performance. I was not special to him. I was just another in a long line of women he was manipulating. I cried until I had no tears left, until that hollow ache in my chest transformed into something harder, colder. As the first light of dawn crept through our windows, a plan began to form in my mind. If Daniel thought he was clever, I would show him what clever really looked like. I was done being the victim in this story. That morning, after Daniel left for work, I created a new email account and used it to set up a fake dating profile. I carefully crafted a persona I knew would appeal to him, someone similar enough to me that he would be interested, but different enough that he wouldn't suspect. I used photos of a friend who had moved abroad years ago, someone he had never met. I wrote a thoughtful, slightly vulnerable bio, the perfect bait for someone like Daniel who preyed on emotional openness. It took less than 24 hours for him to take the bait. He messaged my fake profile with the same charming opener he had probably used hundreds of times before. Over the next few days, I played my part perfectly, being just flirtatious enough to keep him interested but hesitant enough to make him work for it. When he suggested meeting for coffee, I initially declined, making excuses about being nervous. His persistence was remarkable, and eventually I agreed to meet him at a popular coffee house downtown, one large enough that I could observe without being seen. The day of the meetup, I was a nervous wreck. Part of me hoped he wouldn't show up, that somehow this had all been a terrible misunderstanding. 10 minutes before the scheduled meeting time, I called him from my real phone, asking if we could meet up later that day. Without hesitation, he told me he was busy running errands and wouldn't be free. The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that it almost impressed me. I positioned myself in a corner of the coffee shop where I could see the entrance but would be hidden from view. Right on time, Daniel walked in, looking more put together than he ever did for our dates anymore. He had gotten a fresh haircut, was wearing his most flattering shirt, and had even brought a small bouquet of flowers. The sight of those flowers made my stomach turn. When had he last brought me flowers? He sat down at a table with clear visibility of the door and waited, checking his watch every few minutes. As the minutes ticked by, his confident posture began to falter. He became fidgety, his eyes latching onto every woman who entered the cafe. And then, in what felt like some cosmic joke, a woman walked in who matched the description I had given in my fake profile. She was about my height, had similar coloring, and was dressed in the style I had described. Daniel immediately perked up, straightened his shirt, and approached her with his most charming smile. I couldn't hear what he said, but I could see the woman.